Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the latest edition of From Saved to Sane, and I'm Willie Cartwright. Today, we're going to be talking about why I believe that the Abrahamic God is not real. Why I believe the Abrahamic God is a fictional character. But before we get started, I just want to do some house cleaning things really quick. First of all, my book is about to be released. It is about to be available on Amazon. I'm so excited. So excited about this book. I've been working on it for the last couple of years, and we finally got the editing and everything done. So I want you guys to go out and please pick up the book. The book is entitled From Saved to Sane: My Journey Away from Christianity and Why I Believe that Christianity has been detrimental to the African American community. So a fantastic book. I want you guys to go out and pick that book up. And I will also do another video when that book is ready, but we're talking, in a matter of days or weeks before that book is available. So again, I'll be doing another video talking more about the book and letting you know where you can go and pick the book up. Next thing I want to talk about is my availability. I'm available to obviously talk about that book when it comes out via podcast. I'm available for debates. I'm also available for paid speaking engagements on this topic, my book, and related topics. Just want to put that out there. If you need to reach me about a speaking engagement or debate or a podcast, you can reach me obviously via this YouTube channel, From Saved to Sane, or you can email me at WOCartwright, that's CARTWRIGHT at yahoo.com. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's jump into this. Why I believe the Abrahamic God is not real or a fictional character. Really quick, and I know most of you know this, but the Abrahamic God refers to the God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, this topic came about because of a discussion I had with a friend of mine via social media, Facebook, and I'll be really quick about it. Also, it won't take a lot of time. But her and I have been going back and forth about what evidence would I need to believe that this God is real, and the fact that there is no evidence out there outside of the Bible that the Abrahamic God is real. We go back and forth, and we've been doing this for months, probably over a year or so now. We old friends from college, been knowing each other, I guess, 30 plus years. And she's a devout Christian, of course. So recently, she sent me a video of a lady from, I think, Mobile, Alabama, who was a gospel singer and who had been paralyzed 22 years earlier in a car accident. And she had never walked, never stood up, nothing. And one day during this special church service that she was holding, and a pastor from out of town, I think the guy was from London, somewhere in the UK, here in the States, I believe they were in South Alabama, like in Mobile, if I'm not mistaken. And he said some prayers over her in a wheelchair at the altar, and she got up and she walked. And she's been walking ever since. This was a few years ago, some years ago, and she's been walking ever since. So my friend sent me the video, and she said, well, what do you think about this? Proof that miracles exist and proof that my God is real. So I said a few things to her, and it's in relationship to this video. I said, first of all, I would need to see the medical reports. The medical reports over the last 22 years, or the 22 years that she was having rehab and going back and forth to the doctor. I would also want to see the medical reports of what happened afterwards. I wasn't a witness. I did some research just to see if the story was real. The story appears to be real, but I also told her that I also would like to know, other aspects of her life, her mental state, how much rehab she's been doing. And I said, even if this is a true story that she did walk after being paralyzed, she wouldn't be the first. She wouldn't be the first Christian. She wouldn't be the first non-Christian. She wouldn't be the first non-believer that was paralyzed and walked. And I told my friend, I said, there are people who the same thing has happened to, have had the same experience, and they've attributed their miracle, if you would, to their God. And their God was not the Abrahamic God. There's also been people who've had the same experience, and they attribute it to having a positive outlook, or the medical profession, or no God at all, or just their sheer will. So this in itself is not proof that your God, the Abrahamic God, is real. And it also said to her, if this is proof to you of your Abrahamic God, of your God being real, then what about the other hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people who've experienced and gone through some of the same things that she's gone through and other tragedies, and they've cried out and prayed for years and decades, and their situation hasn't changed at all. So is this God that you believe in, is he arbitrary? Does he show favorites? How do you get that special treatment from this God? And so we go back and forth, and finally she kind of just gives up. So that led me to doing this video and explaining the reasons why I believe that the Abrahamic God is not a real God. Now keep in mind, I'm an individual who grew up in the Christian faith, 40 plus years as a Christian. My mother was a minister before she passed away. So I've been in church most of my life. It wasn't up until 6 years ago that I walked away from the faith. So I studied the Bible, I understand the Bible, I know all of this. So I just want to give you some context of where this is coming from. There are basically 3 reasons why I believe the Abrahamic God is fake and not real. To begin with, number 1 is I understand the history of religion. I've studied the history of religion, where religion was started, why it was started. When you understand that mankind needed an explanation to things that he couldn't explain, i.e. thunder, lightning, earthquakes, rain, many of those things at some period of time in history, we as human beings were not able to explain. So we created gods to explain that. Go back and study the history of gods and where these gods came from and what they stood for. Oftentimes in our society, we had gods that was gods of thunder, and gods of lightning, and gods of rain, and gods of purity, and gods of birth, and all type of gods. But these gods were our explanation to things that we couldn't explain. And as we began to understand the natural scientific reasoning behind many of those things, these gods fell to the wayside one by one. Once we understood where thunder came from in the natural sense, the scientific sense, and lightning, and earthquakes, and tsunamis, and rain, how to make rain, and fire, all of those gods that we had created to be the answers for those things all fell by the wayside. So number 1, I understand why and how and when we as human beings created these gods and what was the purpose of it. I also understand where we got the Abrahamic God from, how it was started, where it came from, its origins. Understand what part of the region the Abrahamic God came from, the people in that region, Judea. I know the history of that. Some of the older Persian religions that were an influence on Judaism, and then subsequently Christianity and Islam. Understanding mankind and how we evolved and that particular region is important. There are a couple of books that I'm gonna give you as a reference point that you can read, those of you who are watching this and are truly interested. One would be a book called Before the Dawn, and I'm not sure about the author, but it's a book I read a while ago. Before the Dawn, it talks about, I guess, basically the evolution of human being and mankind, and it talks about, in part of the book, it talks about religion and where we got religion from and why we started it. The second book is a New York Times bestseller called Sapien. This is a very, very popular book, similar to Before the Dawn. When I say Before the Dawn, D-A-W-N, Before the Dawn, similar to that book, Sapien, S-A-P-I-E-N, Sapien meaning man, human beings. It tracks us being human beings from the very, very beginning all the way up to the present. And it talks about every single element of our being and our existence, including religion. When you understand the Abrahamic religion and its basis and its origins and the similarities that it has to much older religions, all of these stories, the crucifixion story, the Jesus virgin birth story, the dying and resurrected God story, the Son of Man, all of this stuff began to make sense. These things are not original to Christianity and Judaism. These things were around in much older religions, and Christianity, Judaism, Islam borrowed from many of these religions. This is a historical fact. If you go back and read it, this is non-biblical, historical, corroborated scientific facts about the things, about these things, these older religions that Christianity and Judaism took from. Study the old Persian religions. Study the Mesopotamian religions, the Egyptian religions, and you'll find many, many similarities. And those religions are much, much older than Judaism and Christianity and Islam. And finally, the third reason that I believe that the Abrahamic God is not real is simply the lack of proof, the lack of non-biblical, scientific, corroborated proof of many, if not most, of the things in the Bible. As I oftentimes will challenge people, show me non-biblical, historical, scientific, archaeological proof of any of the main characters or major events from the Bible. With the exception of David as a main character, there is zero to little proof of any other major character or major event in the Bible, outside of the Bible, regarding proof, corroborated, scientifically proven proof, evidence of those characters or those events. Let me just give you two examples. And I picked these two because these are two of the most important stories and characters that are part of these stories in the Bible. It is part of the very foundation of Judaism and Christianity, and to some extent, Islam. The Exodus story. We all know the Exodus story. The Israelites were in captive by the Egyptians, and they escaped. Moses took them to the promised land. According to that story, if you read that story, there should have been about 600,000 just men that was captive and subsequently freed and taken to the so-called promised land. Historians would tell you that at that time, Egypt probably had about 2 million people. If 600,000 of those people were just the men, when you add women and children, slaves, Israelite slaves, easily 1.2 million. That would have been over half of the Egyptian population at the time. There is zero proof in Egyptian history of the Egyptians holding the Israelis, the Israelites, as captives, as slaves. Zero proof. The Egyptians at the time was a society that kept meticulous records. We know everything about that culture, or we know a lot. I'm not gonna say everything. We know a lot about that culture because of all the things that were left behind, how they recorded what they wrote down, hieroglyphics and pictures and pottery and all kinds of stuff. And there is nothing that scientists have found to this point which would indicate that they held Israelite slaves and that those slaves escaped and got to the promised land. Even Egyptologists and Israeli historians have not been able to find proof. And those are the two groups that would benefit most if this story was true. And even they have not been able to find any type of proof, any type of evidence whatsoever. Study it. Do your research. You will understand and you'll find out that there is zero proof of this major event. Even if you look in the Red Sea, whatever sea that they crossed, there is no evidence at the bottom of the sea of anything like that occurring. Secondly, Noah's Ark, the story of Noah's Ark. Again, zero evidence historically, archaeologically, scientifically, zero evidence outside of the Bible of Noah's Ark. If you want to know where the origins of the Noah's Ark story came from, study the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh. This is a story very similar to Noah's Ark that predated Noah's Ark story. It is where scientists believe that the origins of the Noah's Ark story originated from. Also, study the councils of Nicaea, because there were several. I believe there were five. Beginning with the original, the first one. Understand how we got these stories and how the Bible was put together and who made certain decisions about this. As I said before, study Persian religions, all of the other religions in that region, and you understand and appreciate religion from a historical standpoint, but not a factual standpoint. At least the Bible, not from a factual standpoint, a historically factual, accurate historical um, standpoint. You understand that the Bible is not historically accurate. It's not a book full of historical facts that's been proven outside of the Bible through scientific methods. And so I'll end with this. Those of you who watch this video, those devout Christians or Christian scholars who want to challenge this video and challenge the things that I'm saying, and you want to bring up people like Josephus as non-biblical proof, or Tacticus as I think I'm pronouncing his name right, as non-biblical proof, and some of the other people. Before you do, I challenge you to go back and read fully before you come on here and present those individuals as proof. Because first of all, none of those individuals were contemporaries of Jesus Christ. Meaning none of those people lived during the time that Jesus supposedly lived. All of those people lived far after the time. And really quick, let's just touch on Josephus, because he seems to be the most popular person. Josephus was born after Jesus died. His writings are somewhere 30, 40 years supposedly after Jesus has died. In his writings, he mentioned Jesus Christ twice. The first time, historians believe, for the most part, that it was something that was added later and it's not original and it's not true, and that it wasn't there at the time that he wrote what he wrote. So it's complete fraud, basically, is what historians are saying about it. And the other time it was mentioned because he was talking about what somebody else told him, and he was actually talking about he mentioned the word Christ, and he was actually talking about a different Christ. Remember, the word Christ is a title. It's not a specific name of a person, it is a title. So the second time that he mentioned Christ, it was not about Jesus Christ, it was about someone else. So again, do your research before you come on and try to challenge the things that I'm saying. I don't mind being challenged at all, because I'm like you. I'm learning. This is a journey. I'm having a wonderful time learning, and it's been a journey. But if you're going to challenge the things I say, please have the evidence and the proof, because I certainly have mine. So until we talk next time, have a great day. And this is Willie Cartwright from Saved to Sane.